But it's ruining the industry. It's making it so like linear, like this is how you have to make a game.
Yeah.
And then now all these companies are like failing
Yeah.
because they followed this methodology for like the last 5 to 10 years. And you know, maybe they're starting to wake up and see that like there's more money to be made in games that you actually nurture.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Reticence Games podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Armand.
And we are lifelong gamers as well as video game developers. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about why are we so nostalgic for games when we were kids.
Right.
This will be a fun one. I think especially like if you're a 90s kid, you'll definitely get it. But I am really curious about kids that are a little bit older, or sorry, a little bit younger, were born a little bit later. Do you still feel this like really strong nostalgia? Like I'm talking about if you were born, let's say after the year 2000, do you like crave early 2000s games like we crave like 90s games, or is it just more of like a millennial kind of thing? So let us know in the comments. But we do want to let you guys know that we have a game that we're working on right now called Traveler's Refrain. You can check it out on Steam, and we do have a demo available for you to play. So yeah, hop in our Discord and let us know what you think about that.
And wishlist if you like it.
Yes, please wishlist and subscribe on YouTube. But yeah, let's talk about this topic. This is gonna be fun because I feel like I'm like the biggest nerd when it comes to nostalgic games and like retro games. Like I still go to the store and buy little carts and stuff. There's just something so like warm and fuzzy.
You own a Retron.
I own a Retron.
That's right.
I've modded a Game Boy. I'm like the biggest nerd when it comes to this.
Yeah.
But you have a GameCube that's still hooked up. You buy old
yeah.
games every now and then too.
I love my GameCube. I still, I mean, that's primarily what I go look for at the retro shop, like GameCube games.
Yeah.
Because I lost a couple over the years, maybe a Nintendo 64 game or two.
Yeah.
But yeah, GameCube is my nostalgia era, and like the DS era of games too.
Dude, my biggest regret in my entire life is selling all of my old Nintendo consoles.
Yeah,
like
why did
literally
you do that?
Because I wanted a PS3 at the time and I was like 16 and that was like the Wii was out. So I was like, oh, if I want, I could just buy these games for $5 on the Wii store. Womp womp. But yeah, so why do you think we are so nostalgic about these games?
Why? I think it's because they made us who we are.
Yeah.
You know, I think at the fundamental level, these games made us who we are. And we have so many fond memories of them. And we draw our experiences now from those games. Yeah. And we want our games to leave that impression on the new round of gamers, you know? So I think that is kind of where a lot of our passion comes from, is from those older games that we had so much fun playing that even if like, you know, because even if they didn't get like the best ratings like online, it's just like, it was just so much fun for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, just off the top of my head, like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, like, man, that game was so awesome. Like I played it recently and I was like, man, it's so janky. Yeah. But like it was so fun when I was a kid. And back then, like you just played jank. Like,
I know.
You know, there was the jank was just better than the older jank, you know?
Yes. Well, I was thinking about this too, and I think one of the biggest things about like our age group is the games were evolving so quickly. I mean, we were literally born when 3D wasn't even a thing yet. Right. So it was kind of like we got to see all these stages of the evolution, whereas like, you know, our kids, they're really only ever going to know the best graphics possible, like almost realistic, actually almost realistic graphics.
And that kind of goes back to our last podcast that we did where we talked about the graphical leaps in technology, and we kind of like experienced all those different stages. Yeah. So I think that also adds to the nostalgia factor.
But what's crazy is like, I would say on a fundamental level, games today are a lot more fun. They feel better. There's not as much jank anymore, right? But it's like, what is still drawing us to like playing these old games? Because I will still go back and play like Zelda 1. I'll play like old Pokemon, whatever. It's just
one word for me.
Yeah.
Is music.
That's good.
I love the music of the old games because you know what? They put so much effort into the music of those games. Like the composers were they were in it for the love of the games, and it just really showed. I mean, I've talked about this before with the Zelda games, but like anyone who's listening, like tell me one memorable song from Tears of the Kingdom. Literally name one.
Yeah, I don't
Maybe
know.
there's one from that water shrine that was really cool.
Yeah,
Literally one
yeah,
that I can like think of, and I'm like, oh, that was a memorable tune.
yeah,
I can literally remember every song from Ocarina of Time.
yeah.
I kid you not. I can
I
literally, you
know.
could play a song and be like, that's from this place. Even in Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
I could tell you where all these songs are from, and it's because they felt so different.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you entered a new zone, it was a new song, a new feeling, and it wasn't any of this like blended crap that like it's cool. It's cool. Like, I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah.
It's just not the same.
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
just not. It doesn't give me the same feeling.
There's no like thematic.
Yeah,
It's not. There's not as many thematic songs.
Yeah, like anyone who's played Metroid Prime,
Mm-hmm.
like that game,
Yeah.
you enter a new zone and it just hits you like a truck, like
Yeah.
a new soundtrack, and all these like this bass that hits you,
Yeah.
and you're like, all right, I'm in a new zone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of felt the presence of the zone through the music.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And what's crazy too is like the themes from Zelda and Metroid like are still prevalent in the new games from the first game,
right,
which is kind of crazy. And I think
Yeah.
it's a testament of how good those themes were.
right,
It's the same with a lot of these franchises. Like Final Fantasy is the same way. It's like they still use the Final Fantasy theme song,
right.
like in Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if I wonder if it's because of the kind of limitations of the technology. Like, you know, they only had they had to like program the music, right? Like, I don't know how they made those like chip tunes back then, but I think as far as I know, it was like you had a note and it like had a number or something, and you're kind of like typing out the.
Well, they were MIDI mostly, right? MIDI.
I don't
files. They were mostly MIDI, especially for like the old school
I don't
like
know
Game
if-
Boy games.
I don't know if did MIDI. Tell me in the comments. Did MIDI even exist? Like, I don't know if you could have pressed a key on a keyboard and had it resonate in the game. I literally think they had to like write the score and then programmatically like type out how the song works. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody can tell us in the comments, but yeah, I think that in particular, that aspect, like even think for you, like Final Fantasy VII, when you hear like the Fallen Angel song or like the Sephiroth song, it's like that song just brings you back to that memory.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and for me, like Custom Robo, like getting into the Holosseum and just hearing those like combat songs, it just gets you so pumped to play it again. I mean, so many games that I've played in the past, but for me, I'd say it's probably music that really, the music, and like, it's not just the music, obviously. Like, I want to like be there and play the game, but it's a big factor for me. It's like probably the highest factor.
For me, I think it's like the simplicity factor. I mean, we talked in our last podcast about how like complex and how long and big games are getting, and it's like I like these big experiences, but there's something about hopping in. I'm going to keep bringing this one up, but like I knew like many times I've gone back to Zelda 1 because there's just something about hopping into that game, and it's like they don't tell you what to do. They're just like, go find your sword and go on this adventure.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you're just like killing enemies and go solving puzzles and stuff like that. There's not even much of a story, and I love story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like, and Final Fantasy 1 is the same way. Like, I've played that one multiple times. It's just so simple and like, I don't know, it just feels good. The music is great.
Yeah.
The graphics, I mean, they've kind of like remastered that game over time, but like even the original one, it's like it looked good enough to still be pleasant to look at. You know what I mean? I think that's probably the other thing with a lot of these like really, really retro games is like Wind Waker, I think is a great example. That game looks amazing.
I want to replay that one actually.
And that game, that game feels good too, I think. I'd say the only Zelda game that like, or there's two that I don't really like how they feel anymore. Zelda 2.
Okay.
And Skyward. Dude, I don't really like Skyward Sword.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. I enjoyed it because it was fresh. It was a fresh take on them, like using the sword. So I appreciated it for that. But man, we've talked about the finger boss,
The toe boss.
the toe boss.
Yeah.
Oh man, that literally just.
Yeah.
And the fact that you had to go back and fight it so many times makes me not want to play the game again.
Yeah. I have the like remastered version on Switch, and I just like couldn't get through it because I'm just like, oh man. I just get bored after a while. I don't know what it is. Maybe I
Maybe
just
it's like
need to
that
stick
town
it out.
area is kind of boring. Like,
Yeah, I
right?
don't know
Like
what
it's
it
a little like
is.
vanilla
Yeah.
feeling.
You know what's crazy to think about too is Skyward Sword was the last mainline Zelda before Breath of the Wild.
Was it really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like they had like 2D games here and
Yeah.
there, or like what was that one on the 3DS where he like became like a hieroglyphic?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they had
Link Between Worlds.
yeah, they had that. That game was amazing.
I have to finish that actually.
Oh,
I think I
dude.
need to finish that
That
one.
one actually has one of the coolest stories. The ending has like a huge plot twist.
Was it on 3DS?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to get a new battery for my 3DS.
Oh my
'cause
God.
it's like dying.
Shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think there's just something. I think the other thing too is we've been talking about all these franchises, and we're a little young, let's say, but a lot of these franchises started in the late 80s and kind of grew during the 90s. So
Right.
I think that's the other reason we're a bit nostalgic, is because a lot of the good installments of these games was when we were kids, and then it was like
Yes.
as they got older, it's kind of like they were trying different things, and it sort of didn't feel like the game anymore. So
Right.
an example for me is like Final Fantasy 13 was not the best Final Fantasy in my opinion, because they got to this point where they're like, oh, we need it to be a little bit more actiony, and the story needs to be really complex, and blah blah blah, And I feel like Sonic is another example of that. It's like after those GameCube games, it's like I can't even think of a Sonic game. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Except for Frontiers, I guess, kind of made a splash, right? I haven't played that one yet, but I definitely want to give it a try.
is that
That's the newest one?
Oh,
where
the
you
newest one. Yeah,
it's
I
like
haven't
more
played
like very
that yet.
open world.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Unreal Engine 5 grass, but then like PS3 Sonic.
No, I think they did a good job on Sonic.
Oh man, I gotta try that.
Yeah, the anthropomorphic creature is not kissing anybody though.
No, thank God, dude.
What else was I gonna bring up in regards to this? Oh, Pokemon. I want to talk about Pokemon for a second because I actually just saw like this meme on Instagram the other day that was like Tyranitar, like a picture of Tyranitar in 2D, and then the 3D version of him, and he looks like this like
blob,
like big blob bully.
Yeah.
And the other one's just like this cool like 2D art of him, like his face is sideways and it's like really badass looking. I'm like, that is what I miss too. Like I miss like the Pokemon kind of looked a little more serious back then. They looked cooler in my opinion, and the games were harder. The art looked cooler, and it was just a more overall like fun experience.
I think because we were so influenced by the card game, the art, the manga, the anime, it's kind of like when you were playing the game itself, you could leave a lot to your imagination in terms of like, I think because all the surrounding material was like, there was like the Team Rocket cards, for example, they all looked really dark. So in your mind, you're playing this game, you're like, oh, this is really badass. And there's a lot of stuff, even though if you play it without that context, you're like, this is still very kiddie and friendly. But the new games, because there's a lot more going on, it's kind of like, no, this is like a child's game. Right? Is that kind of what you're saying? Like you play the old ones and it has a badass feel to it.
Yes. Yeah. That's part of it too. Yeah. So that was the last part I mentioned. It was like the overall like feel of it is basically like, you back then you fought Giovanni.
Yeah.
Like you went and you literally found like these houses that are like really tall where you found Lugia and Ho-Oh.
Yeah.
Now it's like you go into a basement and you find Eternatus. Like, why is Eternatus in a freaking basement? And like, why is there no story about it? Like,
I know.
Like, come on. And then like the newest one is all about like these bullies in school that aren't even bullies, and so lame, man.
Do you think games in general back then were better than they are now?
I think. Well. I would say it's a mix because they've definitely made a lot of quality of life changes that I'm thankful for.
Yeah.
You can actually like hit X while you're in a battle and go right to your balls.
Yeah.
So I think that's stuff like little things like that.
Yeah.
Back then you had to like click bag, scroll down to
Yeah.
the thing you wanted.
You could only have like 13 items in your inventory or something.
Yeah.
You had to
They were
start
all
like
in one
throwing
bag.
stuff out. Yeah.
So I definitely think they made a lot of quality of life improvements over the years. But like I said, like you just said, that overall feeling is missing. You know, that feeling of like something bad is happening and you need to solve it.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about Sapphire so much. It's my favorite one is Pokemon Sapphire. And it's like the world literally gets flooded and you're on your like mount, like in the water, just traversing different islands and finding like new badass Pokemon and stuff. And then you find like Rayquaza at the top of like a tower and it's just like so cool, you know? Or is Rayquaza in Sapphire? I can't remember. It might have been in Emerald.
Yeah.
But so that's what I feel like is kind of different.
Yeah.
You feel the same way?
Yeah, I think just in general, it was like there was something because you had this tangible cart, and we also had a lot more of a limited access to games too. It's like we obviously didn't have the money as kids, and also there just weren't as many video games either. It was like there's just I think that's what else like helps with the nostalgia factor is that like there are these specific moments in your life when you're like, I was this age, I know exactly what I was playing at this time, and like I still like can remember that feeling.
Yeah.
And this is a series that again I know you haven't played, but like one of the biggest ones for me is Kingdom Hearts, dude.
Yeah.
That game was so impressionable because I was like 11, 12, 13, something like that, you know, like becoming a teenager, and it was like all about the power of friendship, you know, and like you know, going off on this big adventure as like a little boy, and you really felt like you could identify with Sora and, you know, his mission and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of, and there's other games like around that time, maybe I was a little bit older, but like Devil May Cry and like Resident Evil, that's like, you're starting to get a little bit older and a little bit more mature, and you're like, I want something really dark and edgy, you know? And what's crazy too is like, yeah, I definitely think if you go back to those games, they feel like not modern, but like they hold up. And I think that's the other thing about a lot of these 90s, early 2000s games is like the fact that they still feel good. I think is what also draws us to them. And I'd be curious to know if like, do you think like the, you know, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, like would they just randomly be like, oh, let me go play Final Fantasy 1 because I'm interested in it? Or they just like not do that kind of stuff? You know?
I feel like they probably look at it and be like, oh, the graphics look bad. Like I'm not gonna play that.
You know? That's what I'm kind of curious about. And I'm curious if it's gonna they're
like a little more elite. They're elitist, I feel like.
Well, I mean, I can get it if like you grow up, you have no historical tie or perspective to it, right? Because you're already born into a time when graphics are really good, gameplay feels really tight, everything's very flashy and catches your attention, you know.
Yeah, I think it's just like you're someone's kid and they basically make you like play those. I mean, I'm gonna have Nora play like the OGs.
I'm gonna do the same with Leon.
It's part of the culture, you know. It's like you got to know where it came from, and I think a lot of those older games are more fun anyway. So
yeah, I know this is kind of a cliche, but it's like it really was like a simpler time all around, right? Like you're a kid, the game itself is simple. There's not all these like microtransactions and like, man, we sound so old, but I think there's something to be said about it. It's like it was just pure entertainment for entertainment's sake, not to like feed the machine, you know what I mean? Like
I also think that the internet just ruined video games, honestly. Like in ways it made it better and in ways it made it worse, because now it's like you could load up, you know, the internet and you could see somebody streaming and playing a game before you own it, and it's like the worst feeling to like just watch somebody play it a week before you own it, and it's just like not fun anymore. I feel like back then it was so exciting to, you know, I would literally go to GameStop and wait there, you know, until like 1 a.m. for this game to come out and be in my hands. Yeah. And I would just go home and like hug it and like go to sleep with it.
The best was I
couldn't play it like that night, but I had it. I knew I had it.
My favorite was getting a game from GameStop and driving home and opening the box and looking at the manual.
Yes.
Like that is like
The best.
a feeling we'll never get again unless
know.
something crazy happens and we go back to that kind of stuff. But it's like it just won't,
Yeah.
Man, the reading the manual, having the cart. There,
Mhm.
this is the other thing I was thinking about too. Is like even when discs came around, even when discs had manuals and stuff, it's not the same for some reason as putting a cartridge in a machine.
In a machine, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like there's something satisfying about the little click,
Right.
and I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just I think it's the simplicity
Right.
of it all. Turning on the Game Boy and hearing the little ding,
Yeah.
all of these things. The fact that even the Game Boys themselves, like even Game Boy Color, it's like there was like 10 freaking colors,
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It was just a really good time, and I, I I'm I'm unsure if I go back to these games because I actually want to play them or if I'm just nostalgic for them. I guess the fact that I've played a lot of these old games and gotten through them tells me that it's not just like a whim.
Right.
Um but yeah, man, I think there was just something to be said about the stuff that was coming out back then. It was like revolutionary. Like DMC was a good example. It's like
Mhm.
that game came out and it was like there was nothing like it.
Mhm.
I almost want to say I'd have to look this up, but I think it may have even come out before God of War. I think Devil May Cry, from what I can remember, is like one of the first like what they call them, like character action games.
Mhm.
So you saw this game about this like dude that's like hunting demons with white hair and this big
Yeah.
sword. And
And there's
it's all
metal
flashy
playing
and there's
stuff.
metal playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so unique. Now it's like a game like that comes out and you're like, I've seen this a million times
Yeah.
before.
That's another thing too is yeah, back then it was you had your one game that you played and you just played the crap out of it
Mm-hmm.
and the mechanics were Oh, here's another thing too. Back then it was like the developers were a little more bold in trying different things.
Yeah.
Like here's one big example is I like Yu-Gi-Oh and back then you had like Forbidden Memories for PS1 and then you had like a couple of the Game Boy games that came out.
Mm.
And then you had Duels of the Roses on PS2. Duels of the Roses was so different,
Mm.
but it was so unique and it
Mhm.
was so much fun and the music was amazing. Such an amazing game. And then the ones on the DS and the Game Boy, they were hard,
Mhm.
but what made them so much fun was that you basically had to duel and just acquire these new cards
Mm.
as you played. And you just got better over time because you got all these new cards. And I think that's what makes the games fun and interesting. But nowadays, there's no fun Yu-Gi-Oh games. It's like Master Duel. Okay,
Mm.
you just play the card game, but there's no like,
Game component to it.
yeah, like they came out with Cross Duel, and it was this like stupid gotcha game that was
Mm.
just not even fun. It was like a
Yeah.
4-player like game. It was just so dumb. Like
I think
I don't
it's
know.
like we said on our previous podcast, like these companies know what to do now to make the money. So
Right.
there's a little bit
There's
of
no risk. There's no reason to take a risk.
yeah.
But it's ruining the industry. It's making it so like linear. Like this is how you have to make a game.
yeah.
And then now all these companies are like failing
Yeah.
because they followed this methodology for like the last 5 to 10 years. And, maybe they're starting to wake up and see that like there's more money to be made in games that you actually nurture and try to
What's really
complete.
interesting is there was a time during the PS3 where the AAA developers were going back to doing almost like indie style games, but it was a AAA dev. So like, for example, Ubisoft made that game Child of Light. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
It was like storybook looking. It was a turn-based RPG. It's like something you would not think Ubisoft would have worked on. I remember there's this other game. I think this was a Sony studio game called Puppeteer. Did you ever see that one?
Puppeteer.
You literally played as this like little wooden puppet, and it was like every stage there was like the curtains would fall and all the characters were puppets, and it was just like one of those weird games. There was what was the other one that Sony made that they put on the Vita? It's like you were like little paper characters, and they like folded up, and like the whole world was made out of like folded paper, almost like origami. But just as an example, it's like you look at a game like that nowadays, you're like, oh, that's an indie studio that made something like that,
Right.
But these were like the big companies, and I think it's like you said, this is why a lot of these companies are shutting down. They're like, oh, we need $200 million into this game that we're just going to assume people like because they've liked game X, Y,
Right.
and Z also, instead of, giving us something a little bit more unique. I think the only thing right now that I'm seeing that's like a tried and true method that can continue to exist forever is like the third person action game, like the thing that Sony's been doing, like God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, Ghost of Tsushima. They're all the same game, dude, just with like slightly different mechanics and stories.
That's interesting you brought that up because I think a lot of people are afraid to play first person shooter games, like this guy Nick I know.
Dude, I played a ton of first person. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, so people are like afraid to kind of play that first person perspective because they can't aim or something, or they just don't like it for whatever reason.
I think it's just
not too slow either.
A little more niche than...
No, I think first person?
Than a third person action game.
Right. Well, I think third person action game is more of a blend of different genres. And in being a blend, it allows for more people to be interested in it or engage in it.
Yeah.
Right, because it's not first person. It's not like a standstill like game where you're just taking turns.
Yeah.
It's like a blend of both, right?
Yeah.
So I think it'll kind of it'll have its own group of people that like it, and then it'll kind of pull from the FPS and RPG style
whatever.
games. So it kind of there's always an audience for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I just think that they were definitely doing like new stuff. I mean, the thing about Pokemon in itself is like that was so original at the time.
Yeah.
Now it's like somebody makes a game like Pokemon and it's like, oh, it's just Pokemon.
Loose. No, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, that's
now.
true.
You copied Pokemon. Honestly, I'm glad people are starting to copy Pokemon because they need to do
It'll
something.
hopefully force them to step it up a little bit.
Yes.
We talked about this game a couple podcasts ago, but from recent memory, past 5 years, I think the most unique game I played was Inscription.
I thought you were going to say Mask of Semblance.
Well, your game's not unique.
Your game's not unique. That's an
inside joke.
It's not inside anymore because we shared it, but yeah. Inscription.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I think that was just so original. There's so many like crazy things. I think
it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah.
And it was just like at every turn of the game, you're just like, what is this?
Yeah. And it kept changing. Like its foundation was a card game, but it still kind of kept changing. Like the ways you'd interact with things in the world and the stuff you do, and the graphics would change. Like it was just nuts. And I mean, what's hard is like, I don't want to say everyone's covered all of their bases, but it's kind of like it takes a lot nowadays to make a game like that and be like, whoa, this was really different.
Right. I think what really made it unique was the art style with the perspective and the mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
Just all that blended together. You could just feel like the developers like love for the game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think those are what's making the best like indie games nowadays. Like I talked about Celeste a couple podcasts ago too, but that was another one where it's just like I felt like I was playing the developers' passion, you know, like what they wanted to make, you know, and that was another that and Shovel Knight felt the same way, where it was like those are callbacks, straight callbacks to a lot of retro games, but like they did it in a way that it's almost like those are the modern nostalgic games. Like I'm nostalgic for those games, you know, even though they're new.
For me, I also call back to a lot of like the Halo games I played growing up because we played together.
Yeah.
Like me and my friends would sit in a room together and we'd do like 2-on-2 or you know, every man for himself and everyone tried to beat me all the time because I was the best in my group. Sorry, but I was. But
you probably played that game like you do with Villager. You just like
I'm
just cheese people.
I'm not good in the grand scheme of things, but I was better than all.
You
my
know
friends.
How to beat the system.
Yeah. So
you found like the one wall that was like kind of invisible, and you just like snipe people from behind.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I had my glory days when I was just really good. I played in a few semi-pro matches that were very scary.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was a good time in my life, and I call back to that a lot because it was just so, I think it was novel. It was
Mm-hmm.
very novel. It was the advent of like online multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also just so much fun to play together in a
Mm-hmm.
room. And just be like the best in the room was just kind of nostalgic too.
I think that's another example, though, of an evolution where, I mean, I don't know. I want to say that was one of the first person shooters that like felt good
Mm.
to play.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the controls felt
Yes.
good because before then, you know, you're talking about like 007. You know, you play that
Perfect
game and you're
Dark,
like, yeah,
007. Yeah.
they
Metroid
controlled
Prime.
like crap.
Yeah.
Well, Halo came out before Metroid Prime, I think.
Halo 1
right?
did. Yeah. Halo 1
Yeah.
did.
So, but
Halo 2 came out 2 years before 2004 was when Metroid Prime came out. And I think Halo 2 came out around the same time.
maybe sounds about
remember
right.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were around the same time.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it probably felt so novel because you're like, wow, like I'm playing as this like space warrior, like I can shoot and it like feels good. I don't feel like I'm having to use tank controls to like
Right.
turn them around or whatever.
And they had legendary mode, which was super fun because you could play with like another person, and you would just like do co-op together, and it was so much fun.
Oh yeah, the campaign, right?
The campaign.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the campaign was really fun too.
I
there were a lot of like little hidden things that you could find in the levels and stuff.
I think that's actually another good shout out to the nostalgia thing was the community factor, and also what you're saying about the internet, like going back to Pokemon. That's a good example of like you need two people to trade Pokemon to
Right.
get all of them, right? Like
Right.
you couldn't just like get some item to evolve Ghastly or to evolve Haunter into Gengar like you
Right.
can in the new ones.
Yeah.
And I'm not like complaining about that because it's definitely like a ease of life like adjustment,
Right.
like a positive adjustment. But there was something about back then, like, you know, the whole thing going to the schoolyard and like talking about like missing no and like
Right.
you know, that kind of thing. Like the internet was just not as big as it is now, so we had to figure out a lot of this stuff ourselves.
Right.
And
trying to trade Pokemon on the bus in the morning was so hard because first of all, you couldn't get caught with your GameCube, with your Game Boy.
Yeah.
You had to hold like the cable was so short too, so you had to like the first cables were so short, so you had to like hold it up to like the seat with your friend, and the bus was like rattling. So like randomly would just like disconnect. You're like, no, like did I lose my Pokemon? So those were the days. Obviously, like a lot's changed, but like you said, like I think they've kind of added fuel to the fire where it's like they're making it so much easier to evolve. You can literally get an item called a link cable in Pokemon. You just evolve your Pokemon, which I guess it's fine now because Gengar and Machamp, and they're so old now that
there's gonna be videos in like 10 years from like Did You Know Game. It's like, did you know that the item link cable was from a link cable that they used to put together? Oh man.
So yeah, I think obviously the social aspect is slowly diminishing, and I think the companies are picking up on it. They're like, people aren't getting together like they used to.
It Takes Two was a good resurgence for that, and I think Animal Crossing was another one where they're like trying to like make people play together in a sense that's not just like a match based game. Because obviously it makes sense for multiplayer games.
Also, in the older games, you could talk to other people online, whereas like a lot of the newer games, they don't let you talk to people.
Well, I did. I mean, I haven't turned it on, but I think in the Harry Potter, the Quidditch game I was just telling you about, I think you could just like turn on your microphone.
Really?
I think so.
I mean, that's also a thing I miss about like older games is like you could get into a lobby and just talk to people and like have fun. I mean, every now and then you'd get like either like a bully or like somebody who's just like blasting music in your ear.
Yeah.
But you just kind of mute them and you just play, and you can like talk, and if you're mad, you could like send a message after like you're trash, Fight me one-on-one, you're trash. 1v1 for accounts.
Oh man.
It just kind of like gave you a bit of like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a nasty person, but it's like when I lose like a really frustrating game of Yu-Gi-Oh, I just want to like message the person and be like, you're trash kid, like Like, you're so lucky.
You're one of those.
You're so lucky you drew that card. I wouldn't be like nasty, like say mean stuff, but I would say stuff like I would at least get a little bit of closure. Even if there was like a message you could send at the end of the game that's like, I don't know, you did good, kid, or something. Yeah. I don't know. I would just like click that and be like, and the other person would know that I was frustrated. So yeah, I think. Oh man, I think there's just something that I miss about that era of games where you could just kind of like interact with your opponent in some way. Like nowadays, it's like you play a match and you just go to the next one. You're like, all right, and you can't even talk to people in the chat.
Like man, I probably sound whatever. I don't play a lot of these games, but like in Overwatch, for example, do you have to be like in a Discord server to talk to people, or can you talk to people like in the?
Yeah, you can talk to people in the match.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but only on your team, I guess.
You can voice chat with people on your team, but you can text chat with other people on the other team.
Got it.
And your team. There's like different chat channels. There's like the group, and then there's like the match chat.
Gotcha.
So you can like you can at least talk to the other team, and even if you want to say something positive, like you can be like, "Wow, nice shot."
Yeah.
You know, like you can't do that in a lot of games now. It's it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously like a lot of mean people online. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to get stuck with somebody who's just like a completely nasty person. You know what I mean?
The other thing too, though, I'm thinking about, I played that game Marvel Snap on my phone, and I think the other thing is like the matches are so fast that maybe that's another reason for it. Like they have some emotes you can kind of do back and forth, but yeah, it's like they don't want to just open up voice chat for like a 5-minute match, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I don't have as much experience with that as you, obviously.
Did you see there's a clip on the internet of some guy, he loses a match of Halo or something, and he sends this guy a voice recording on Xbox, and it's like he's like, "Oh yeah, you're you think you're so good? Well, I bet you can't play this," and he like plays like a riff on it.
Really?
Plays like a solo on his guitar.
It's so nerdy,
dude. Something goofy like that, and then that was it. That was just a clip.
That's so
just
funny.
Like followed up this match by sending this like clip to somebody. Like that's the stuff that I miss, I guess. I don't know. It's just a different time.
It was a different time.
So
great time. Nice. All right. Well, it was good to reminisce, I think. Let us know in the chat or in the comments, like if you're a younger person, what you think about these old games. Do we just sound like two old men up here, or do you play old games too, just for fun? I'm actually really curious.
What's your favorite game soundtrack from the old days? Is it
game soundtrack?
You know, Custom Robo? Is it Sonic Adventure 2 Battle? Is it
Yeah, out of all 5 people that played Custom Robo, let us know if you're one of them.
Yep.
But yeah, go check out Traveler's Refrain on Steam. Go play the demo and let us know what you think in our Discord. And until next time, we will talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.